Hey, this is Jake Wood, host of the Viva Albertos podcast, as well as a writer for the site. I am so excited to join this community and bring you all top-notch content, as well as being a growing voice in the community.
Hi, I'm Heather Simon. I am the site manager at Viva Albertos. I am very excited about the upcoming season with you all, because something that I love about being with Viva Albertos is the amazing people and all the lifelong friends I have made.
Hello, everybody. I'm Mike Jones. I write under the pseudonym Skyrick ESQ for Viva Albertos. And my forte with the site is the roster rules. There's almost always a rules reason why moves are made, and I enjoy interacting with the community to help people understand why certain moves are made.
Hi, this is Gabe. I'm a writer for Viva Albertos. So I just love presenting my opinions and seeing the feedback from the community, who basically have taught me how to become a more knowledgeable baseball fan, to see what people think of what I have to say, and love to hear what other people say in the comments especially.
Hey, my name is Adam Akbani. I've been writing at Viva Albertos for going on almost 2-3 years now, and my favorite part is the whole community, being able to talk baseball with lots of fans, especially in St. Louis. It's always a great time.
Welcome into another episode of the Viva Albertos podcast. Today with me, I have site manager Heather Simon. Heather, how are you doing this fine evening?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well. We also have with us writers Gabe Simmons. How are you, sir?
I'm great.
And Adam Akbani. How are you, sir?
Doing well. I apologize for not being at the last one, but you know how schedules can be, right?
Hey, listen, and I put the post out to make sure that like all of our readers know that like this is to be like a rotating, cast. Nobody is like fully expected to be here for every episode. So you are well within your right to be here or not be here based on, what you've got going on in your life. So today's episode is going to be centered around reader questions that I had previously. Whenever Jason was hosting the podcast, he did something that inspired me, and I thought that fans would really enjoy is like a monthly reader mailbag. So I know for me personally, as I was kind of growing into this role, I always enjoyed asking questions of like Jeff Jones or Katie Woo or like a Derek Gould, and like whenever they would actually come back and answer something, like I always found that to be like really cool and like validating in a sense. So I just want to give our readers the same opportunity to ask us questions and have those answered, and feel like we're truly connecting with them on that level. So the first question comes to us from Silent George. His first question is, what led you to be Cardinals fans? And I will start it off with Adam.
Yeah, I mean, so for me, I was born and raised in St. Louis. Excuse me, sorry. It was kind of just born into the whole situation, for better or for worse, how stressful it can be. We were very lucky and fortunate for the past, at least from like early 2000s all the way up until maybe the mid 2010s, is when we really kind of started to see the slight debacle and then turn into the situation that we're in right now. Just like all of us, like I said, it's you're born in St. Louis, you're bleeding Cardinal red from the moment you're born, right? That's literally everybody. There's no excuse not to be unless you're not from here, or unless you have a family member that happens to be from Chicago or some other part of the country, wherever it may be. But, my dad was a huge Cardinals fan, baseball fan. So I was more just kind of grandfathered into the situation. I feel like a lot of us probably share that same backstory as well.
Sure. Heather, how did you become a Cardinal fan?
It's pretty similar. I'm from a small town in the middle of nowhere in Illinois, which is probably like, as the crow flies, maybe 20 minutes from St. Louis. But with the rivers and everything, it's about an hour, 15-minute drive. So that's sort of the whole thing. But I really didn't start liking baseball as much as I do now until I started college, I think. And I went to Maryville University, which is in St. Louis. And I don't know if it's just the proximity to the stadium or being in, this culture of baseball fans. It really is kind of, it's hard to explain if you're not from St. Louis, but there really is this Cardinal culture. People make fun of it, I think, because the best fans in baseball thing. And I'm not saying that that's true, but there is. It's just the only thing to do in St. Louis, really. And so a lot of people are really into baseball around here, and it's kind of hard to not get on that bandwagon. And the Cardinals were really good at that time too. There was the 2011 World Series was going on my freshman year. So we're sitting in the dorms watching baseball, making friends, and it's just kind of a like life altering experience. And I owe the Cardinals a lot. I have a lot of great friends because of Cardinal baseball, and I owe them a lot, so I stick around no matter what.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that like all of us kind of grew up in that like early 2000s range whenever the team was like really, really good. And so I think from that era has really like birthed a new generation of Cardinal fans. And so, Gabe, what about you? When did you what led you to be a Cardinal fan?
First off, I'd say some Blues and City fans would be offended that the Cardinals are the only game in town, Heather. But
well, I'm talking about
I'm just kidding.
2011.
Well, but still Blues existed then. But anyway,
Rams were there back then too, but
yeah,
you
Rams were
weren't
back then.
one of those games.
I was born to it as well. I was told, I don't remember this, that I taught myself how to read by reading Cardinal media guides.
Oh, that's
So I'm pretty sure I went to my first game when I was less than one because my parents had season tickets growing up when I was growing up. So just pretty much from birth was a Cardinals fan.
Yeah, so like for me to answer this question as well is kind of loaded and emotional, I guess. My late grandfather, who just passed away a couple months ago, he and my late father, who also passed away back in 2006. When you think of the traditional way that you spend summer days at the ballpark and at the ball field, it was just like you guys say, it was just a way of being in St. Louis. And for me, it started out as a family affair. And, back in 1998, 99, I think, I was at Cardinal games. And I think for me, what really inspired me and like what captivated me was like obviously Mark McGwire and like his home run hitting prowess. And like when you go into the ballpark, and my family I didn't come from like super rich money type family, but just well enough. And we would sit like up in the upper deck seats and sitting all the way up there in this kind of modern day cathedral, and like the sights and the sounds and the smells, and it's all kind of like overwhelming. And it really encapsulates like the whole experience. And then specifically with Mark McGwire, whenever all the flash bulbs, if you remember, like those flash bulbs would all pop around the entire stadium. And like, this is just a really cool experience. And then I also got to experience one of, McGwire's home runs in that era too. So like that was exciting. And, the fireworks go off and like the whole like hoopla of everything, it really just like, that environment, really captures and captivates you. And so for me, that's kind of where my Cardinal fandom was born, and then raised with the love from just a family love for the Cardinals, to a point where I don't know, I almost became a little bit obsessive in some respects about the way I just think about baseball and Cardinals and everything in that nature. And so it's just always kind of been a part of, I don't know, my daily life, I suppose. And getting the opportunity to now do things like this, and when I was doing Rambling Redbirds before, and it's just like, it's continuing to just like, you think of like a stairway, it's just another step towards, the enjoyment, another elevated step towards that enjoyment or that fandom, so to speak. Silent George also asks for 3 favorite players ever, maybe not even Cardinals, he just wants to really get to know people, stories about people. Let's keep it to just one. Like, who's your favorite player all time? Because I feel like trying to figure out 3 in a matter of minutes is kind of exasperating. So, Heather, we'll start with you. Your favorite player all time.
All right. I wonder if anyone can guess. I've talked about it a couple times on the site, so I'll give everyone a little bit of an opportunity to guess before I reveal. But it's the one jersey that I have.
Is it Drew
It's Dave.
Verhagen?
No, it's
Ew,
yeah, it's
gross.
David Eckstein.
Eckstein, that's a good
Um,
pick.
I have a David Eckstein jersey. I just liked that he was scrappy. That was something that appealed to me back, oh gosh, how old was I in 2006? 13? Something like that. That's just something I always wanted to be quick and scrappy, and I was not. So,
Yeah, no, David Eckstein, and like you can't help but love like the personal side to him too, and everything he does with
yes.
like raising money for it's kidneys, right? A kidney foundation, and I forget the name of it. I think it's like for some kind of cause. I don't remember the name. I'm sorry. I'm so
Mhm.
sorry. I can't remember.
I should know if he's
Yeah,
my favorite player, and I don't. So, but no, my nickname is Scooter, and my favorite player of all time is David Eckstein. I feel like that checks out.
2006 World Series MVP. Gabe, your
Yeah.
favorite player all time?
My favorite player is definitely Matt Carpenter. Honestly, when I first got into advanced stats, he was like the first prospect that I latched onto, and then he actually worked out. So that I kept that attachment as he kept succeeding and kept elevating his game. So that was really fun to watch.
So, just a real quick aside, Gabe, how did you feel this last offseason whenever the Cardinals ended up bringing him back? Because I know there was quite a bit of consternation amongst fans, like, oh, why are they signing this guy? He's washed up, blah, blah, blah. For you, was it mixed emotions, or were you just simply just happy he was back no matter what?
Honestly, I feel like most of my worry is I don't want people to hate Matt Carpenter. So I was afraid he was going to do poorly, but I actually kind of liked how it worked out this past year, and I'd be fine if he was the same role next year where he gets like 150 plate appearances, and like whenever somebody's struggling a bunch, just he could start or something. I don't mind that role because that you got to have somebody like that on the roster, and you're okay with not playing him for 2 weeks. So yeah, I'm okay with how it turned out, and I'm okay with running it back, especially since the Cardinals are like we're not necessarily going to be a playoff team this year.
Yeah, unfortunately, I could see quite a few fans with the negative connotation behind that and kind of saying that this is the nostalgia part of the way that like the Cardinals and the DeWitts have operated recently. It's trying to, scrape money out of people rather than like putting a product on the field that gives them the best chance to win possible. And for me, I kind of fall in the same line of you, Gabe, is like I would just be more excited to see him, and like even if it's just like a super diminished role, fine. It's if they're not really intending to contend, Matt Carpenter fans are still welcome in the stands, and just whatever.
And I don't think Carpenter's like a big like draw for fans, honestly.
No,
because I always felt like he got more hate even when he was good than deserved. So I feel like he's got his detractors more than supporters almost sometimes.
I think that so based on the direction the team has like publicly stated to go, I can kind of see how it would feel like the Cardinals were talking out of both sides of their mouth if they brought Carpenter back, because I can hear a really good argument for that being that bench spot being for a younger player trying to ascend. I can hear that argument and probably agree with that sentiment as well. If he winds up back on the team for the veteran minimum and just plays once a week, if that, and the Cardinals are just trying to do right by the player, fine, whatever. I'm not going to hem and haw too much about it either. So that's kind of where I'm at on it. Adam, your thoughts on or your favorite player?
I'll give you the three. I'll give it to you pretty quickly.
Okay.
Number one, 100% has to be Albert Pujols. I mean, we had the luxury of having the best player, arguably, of the 2000s on the Cardinals, and he won 3 MVPs during that time, and is arguably the best player of this century. Maybe not named Shohei Ohtani or Mike Trout, and if you want to get into it, maybe A-Rod, but that's a different discussion for another day. Or Barry. Number two, I would go John Jay, just simply because he's a he's a cousin of a close family friend. So I met him when I was super young, and he gave us a bunch of autograph material. He gave us some batting gloves, a bat, which he gave to my friends, and he's just a great overall guy. And it's super cool to have him on the coaching staff this year. And he was on the Marlins when I was at Fish Stripes, so I get to talk to him when he was in the press or when he was in the locker room. So that was pretty fun. And then the last one, I would probably let's go Anthony Reyes, just because I liked his pitching style. He was part of the team as the fifth starter on that 2006 championship team. So, he's a good player. I like him going out there, and it was fun to watch him. I have a really good answer for least favorite Cardinal. I think you guys would all probably like that too. I feel you guys might also agree with that.
Least favorite Cardinal?
Yeah.
I gotta know. I gotta know.
I'm worried.
I would go John Smoltz.
Oh no.
Really?
Is it bad that I was excited?
He's okay here.
Yeah, I was excited when they got him. His commentary on Fox is kind of brutal. So
exactly.
It's all right. So I was kind of hoping, Adam, that you were gonna go obscure off the wall, so that way I could easily waltz into the answer of Albert Pujols. Come on, it's El Hombre, 703 career home runs. That dude was the dude in St. Louis, and pretty much from the year 2000 to 2021. It's really hard to think of baseball and not think of Albert Pujols in a synonymous thought. And so for me, getting to go to games and watch that on a consistent basis, and unfortunately my kids aren't going to get that, don't know what I'm not going to say that Jordan Walker is going to be Albert Pujols or anything like that, but my kids aren't assured the opportunity to go watch, a living legend and a future Hall of Famer and all of that. They're going to get to see the growth of some of these young guys, but not like us, not like our generation who got to grow up with Albert and Scott Rowland and Jim Edmonds of the MV3, or the days whenever you could watch Matt Holliday or let me think of some Carlos Beltran, Lance Berkman, as you go through the years, all those great names that the Cardinals brought in, and we got the opportunity to watch and enjoy. Last question from Silent George, and then we'll move on to others. I really enjoyed the kind of string that he went through, so I'm going to hit them all here at once. Brush with greatness is how he called this. Was there a time you got to meet/talk to a player or one of your heroes unexpectedly? We'll start with Gabe.
I have three, and I'll try to make it very quick. First off, I did meet John Jay as well. I was at the Jewel Box setting up for a wedding, and he happened to be, they were showing him the wedding. They're showing the venue, sorry, because he was getting married at the time. And I took a picture with him, so that was fun. And then the second one was early 2000s. I was with my dad at winter warm-up, and I had to get my ball signed. I was trying to get my ball signed, and it was Pujols and Edmonds on the stage, and they just walked off when I was there. And then Fernando Vina saw me and then signed my ball, and then he was my first favorite player ever. And then the third is my neighbor when I was growing up.
That's such a cool name drop. I remember Fernando Vina, and when I was a kid, I would say his name to casual Cardinal fans, and they're like, "Wow, this kid really knows baseball. He's talking about Fernando Vina."
Vina Polanco.
Yeah, Polanco. That's right. Edgar Renteria. Oh, the names.
Yeah, my name, my Viva Alberto's name, STL Cards Fan 4 is for Vina, not Molina.
That's really cool.
Fact.
Oh, really? I never knew that. As long as I've known you.
Yeah.
I always thought it was Molina.
No, it's Vina. And then
I never thought anything of it.
Yeah, I just picked a random number.
Yeah, well, I did. I picked my favorite number. I didn't pick a random, I guess, but.
Well, that is my favorite number, but it's because of Vina.
7. Who's 28? Anyway,
Arenado is 28 right now.
Oh yeah.
My third interaction is that my neighbor growing up, let me see if I get this right. Their sister, I believe, married Ryan Madsen, the relief pitcher, former closer, and he was at the house one day, and they were like, "Do you want to meet Ryan Madsen?" That dude was 6'8". I could not believe how tall he was. Like, it was ridiculous.
And
It
he was
nice.
legit too in his prime.
Yeah, he was really good. But could not believe how tall he was in person, because he might be like, yeah, he 6'7", 6'8". But yeah, that was my third one. I got to meet him in person next to my house. That was wild to me, that I was so close to my house and I was just meeting a Major League Baseball player.
Adam, you mentioned meeting John Jay. Was there another player that you have interacted with or crossed paths with?
In terms of Cardinals, probably
Doesn't have to be Cardinals.
Actually, I did meet Adam Wainwright at the airport. I was going to Europe with my family when I was like 13 or 14, and I ran into him. And I was like, "Hey, my name's Adam." I was like, "I love watching your pitch." He's like, "Cool, that's a great name, bro." And I was like, "Okay." Like he like not in a mean way like I said it, but he was actually like pretty cordial and nice. I tried to make it quick because I figured like the last thing he wants is people coming up to him and be like, "Oh my God, Adam Wainwright."
Yeah, I mean, I guess from his perspective, I'd be like, okay, I don't really know what you want me to do with that. Hey, good day.
I can picture exactly how he said it.
Yeah,
Adam Wainwright.
He's very gracious. Very
it's impossible for him to be mean.
Yeah.
100%.
Heather, your interaction with greatness.
So with greatness,
yes. Well, that's what he says. Brush with greatness.
Yeah.
I like how he phrases
debatable.
that.
I have one story that I think is part of the Viva Alberto's of my personal Viva Alberto's lore. Is that for the Cardinals Care 6K, we had a Viva Alberto's team and we raised the most money and won an on-field to be on the field before game started, and we got to meet a player.
That's cool.
And the player was Joe Kelly. And
Machine Gun Joe Kelly.
Gabe probably knows where I'm going with this. But when I met Joe Kelly, there was a group of guys and then me. And so I don't know if Joe Kelly was like surprised by me because he shook everyone's hand and then got to me, and I guess he just didn't know what to do. So I reached out to shake his hand and introduce myself, and he gave me the limpest handshake I've ever gotten him. I tell at the time Joe Kelly gave me a dead fish handshake.
Oh my gosh.
So that's when I met someone. And then then there was a time I was also on the field for a similar thing. I think it was another Cardinals Care 6K thing. And they were playing the Brewers, and Scooter Gannett was on the field. And someone in our group yelled, "Scooter," to him. And when he turned and looked at us, I said, "My name's Scooter too." And he said, "You copied me." And I was like, "No, I didn't. I think I was Scooter first." But anyway, that was the other interaction. And then probably the third story I have is I've had a couple of interactions with Carlos Martinez. I got to interview him once for his charity Tsunami Waves. And then I met him at a charity event there. And then some random Wednesday, I was at the Jewish Community Center in Chesterfield. And I was watching my friend play a rec league basketball game. And I was just sitting on the bleachers. It was only two people on the bleachers, me and a guy that looked a lot like Carlos Martinez. And so I was looking at him and I was trying to get a view of his forearm to see if it had this tattoo. Because I know what Carlos Martinez looks like, but I wasn't expecting to see him there.
Right.
And so when I saw the tsunami tattoo, I kind of like scooted up and like whispered to him, "Are you Carlos Martinez?" And he goes, "Yeah." And I'm like, "Okay." And then I scooted away. And then we shot hoops after the game, and that's my Carlos Martinez story.
I have
at the Jewish Community Center.
I have a myriad of stories to pick from. So like when I was 5 or 6 years old, I got a hat signed by JD Drew, and I got to meet him. Whenever I was in like 4th grade, I used to be a part of this group that was like a summer club. It was called Sun Club, and like a bunch of kids could go there and their parents would drop them off. And one of then you'd go on like a field trip to an experience in St. Louis or somewhere in the greater area and go do that for a day basically. And one of the trips was a tour of Busch Stadium. And while we were all down on the field and walking around, there was at the time a Cleveland Indians player running the track. Come to find out, as he's shaking his hands, it's CC Sabathia that's down there running laps, shaking hands with all the kids. And so I got to meet and shake CC Sabathia's hand. And then there was another time when I was in like I was a junior or senior in high school, and we got to go sing the national anthem at Busch Stadium, and I got to high five Matt Carpenter as I was walking back up to the stand, out of the gate to go back up into the stands. And so, got to meet some cool players in my past. Let's see. Let's move on. Our friend Memphis Mike says, I have never had a question answered on a Viva El Birdos podcast. Never as in ever. So, Memphis Mike, here is your day of redemption. Here's a philosophical question. Would you prefer start your best offensive lineup with the intent of substituting better defense in later innings, or begin the game with your best defense for run suppression, holding back some offensive firepower for the later innings? Heather, let's start with you.
Oh boy. Okay, so the philosophical question, I think this is kind of cheating, and I feel like maybe this is going to be a common thing. You go with whoever's the most valuable, regardless of offensive defense, right? So if someone's defense is so good that they become more valuable than maybe a bat first player, I think you got to go with that, right? So I think that would be my philosophy, is try to just pick the more valuable player. But if I had to look between these two, I think you want to do offense first, because you want to get as many at bats from that better offensive player as possible, and then use defense for later in the game if it's close. That would be my pick.
Yeah, interesting that you started with like a hybrid of the two. I hadn't really considered that, but thank you for inspiring me with a new thought. Adam, your thoughts on the philosophical question?
Yeah, I agree with Heather, and it should be a case by case basis. I mean, that's why you can pick individual players for your lineup, obviously. But I mean, on average, it's easier to accrue better offense than it is to do defense, and you shouldn't, in theory, be relying just purely on defensive ability for your entire. Like if you have an elite defensive team but your offense is mediocre, you're not going to go too far, right? Versus if you are, for example, a team like the Dodgers, who had one of the best offenses in baseball this year. They obviously won the World Series, but their defense might have left some out to be desired, and they were probably below average in terms of the league. You want to rely on offense. Hopefully your lineup carries and you have good pitching, and if your defense may not be that good, it's obviously not super ideal. You want to have best of all three, but if there's one that's going to lag behind the other two, it's probably going to be defense. So I would say you want your offensive lineup to be producing as much as they can, but in the later innings, hopefully you're already winning, and then you can kind of go ahead and substitute, have that luxury of putting in a guy like a Michael Ciani in center field, or something like that. But that isn't super ideal, where you're going to have a lot of your guys on offense. You don't want to stack your lineup with Michael Ciani's, where you have 70 WRC plus hitters, but a guy who'll get you a win and a half on defense, because I mean, A, it's not fun to watch, and B, it's not super sustainable, and C, it's not good. You want your guys, you want to pack a lineup with heavy hitters if you can.
Yeah. Gabe, are you starting offense or defense first?
I mean, this is a weird answer, but it kind of depends on who's pitching, right? Because
interesting.
If, say, Miles Michaelis is pitching, kind of want a good defense behind him, the best defense possible behind him, really. But if Sonny Gray's pitching, who strikes out a lot of guys, then I'll go all offense. All things being equal, though, yeah, I have to say offense, just because you the ceiling for offense is just much higher than the ceiling for defense. Like there's only so much you can impact a game defensively, whereas offensively you could hit 4 homers.
Yeah, so for the Miles Michaelis point, you can't play players beyond the outfield wall, and so I think it's kind of a moot point. But generally, the general philosophy is that you start your best offensive lineup and substitute out defense later in games, like you guys have referenced. For me, I guess the idea that like you would hold back offensive pieces probably played more in like the previous iteration of the National League, whenever like pinch hitting kind of had greater like value than it does now. So for me, it's obviously you start your best offensive lineup, you try to score as many runs, and then you try to protect that lead with your best defensive players possible. Is just kind of the general philosophy behind that. The next question, the Duke asks, who is Jake Wood? And because I haven't had, I guess, Heather, is there traditionally like a Meet the New Writer article that everyone puts out, or did I miss that memo?
I don't know. I think sometimes people do like an introductory article, but I'm someone that kind of just appreciates someone just diving straight in, and
I held on to that first article for 3 weeks basically. Yes. So I was ready to go. Who am I?
But it is a community, so yeah. I get why people are curious.
Yeah.
So I think this is a good time, a good chance to introduce yourself a little bit.
I am a graduate of Lewis and Clark Community College in Godfrey, Illinois. I grew up just south of Alton in a town called Wood River. I know
where Wood River is. Oh, we have to talk.
I grew up.
You went to Louie and Chewy.
Yes, I did. And so I graduated here with a degree in radio broadcasting. I grew up just with a complete affinity that I call it a passion that's a borderline obsession when it comes to baseball, and my wife would shake her head in vigorous agreement with that. It kind of annoys her sometimes whenever she asks me what I'm doing or what I'm thinking about, and my answer is almost always baseball related, and so she just kind of rolls her eyes at me, if that gives you a general sense of what I'm like. For me, who am I? I feel like that's a really loaded question. I'm a dad. I'm a husband.
Who are any of us?
It's right. Yeah. I am a writer and podcaster for Viva Albertos. I was a podcaster. I started my own podcast a year ago called Rambling Redbirds Podcast. I've had on, various guests, like we had Kevin Wheeler on last week, and I've gotten the opportunity to talk to Jeff Jones and Katie Wu, and Heather knows about a couple of the names that I've dropped to her that are in the coming weeks. And so like, we're up in the game here. Like a couple of the people that I've talked to were like, I want to do your podcast, but I'm afraid it wouldn't get enough traction. And now that they heard that I'm associated with Viva Albertos, they're like, now I'm excited to join you. And while it wasn't anything personal against me, I totally understood it. And so like, there are names that are kind of in the chamber that I'm ready to fire off over the next couple months that I'm really excited for fans to get to hear. So who am I? I am someone who enjoys talking Cardinals baseball, and I promise you are going to get a lot of Cardinals baseball out of me. So the next question was intended for Mike, but Mike could not be with us tonight. His question was, this is from The Real Aaron. If Skyrick is going to be on, could you guys talk about the mechanics of working out a trade for a player with a no-trade clause? Does the team have to fully work the deal out with one another and then go to the player agent and see if they can work out a deal to waive the no-trade clause? Or is the agent told, hey, we have offers from his examples were given, like the Dodgers, the Yankees, the Braves, check in with them and then get a feel for which team you think would most likely go, or you can get from the most from. And Mike's response on the no trade issue, the club will listen to interest from other clubs, but is going to go to the player with a no trade first to see if and where he might be willing to be moved. If the player is dead set on staying in St. Louis, like we just recently saw with like a Wilson Contreras or a Sonny Gray, there's no point in even trying to work out a package with that interested team. And I'll obviously echo that sentiment as well. Generally, teams will talk to the player themselves and do like end of season meetings and see where that player is heads at first before going out into the market and kind of discussing with other teams the way they want to go about that situation. If they even have a desire to move that player in the first place, it could obviously be the other way around where it is an acquiring team is asking the team. So if you're the Cardinals, say the Braves are asking the Cardinals, hey, can we get Sonny Gray? And we already know from Sonny Gray telling us that no, he doesn't want to move. No, that player's not available. So that's kind of the dynamic of how that all kind of structures and works out. This next question comes to us from London Bird. And Adam, I'll start with you. Is the Diamond news actually really good news, as it will give ownership a firm number they can work to rather than the fear of a great chasm of doom, as he wrote? Is it good news that we know now what the firm number is, or is it still a matter of wait and see what they do?
So let me make sure I understand this question. When you say the Diamond news, are you talking about the new TV deal that they just signed?
Yes, I believe that's what the fan is referencing.
Right, and there's a firm number saying is that a good thing that we know what that is, that it could potentially contribute to payroll or whatever? Is that the implication?
Can we project out what that final number might, in terms of payroll, might be, and does that give us hope? In my mind, the way that London Bird is asking this question, does that number guarantee that the Cardinals are okay to either stay where they are financially or even add, or are they still in a situation where they're going to have to detract from their payroll further, is kind of how I'm reading this.
And I will say, for some context, what I'm reading is that they are expecting to lose about a quarter of their previous rights fees figure. The previous contract they had. So it says, like, from DeWitt, there's a 25% haircut. So they have lost some revenue from that revenue stream, is what it sounds like to me. Which is what the question is kind of asking. Is that really, really bad?
Yeah. From the reporting that I saw, I believe it was Derek Gould that had the number of about $17 million less than what they were expected to get from the deal had it continued on the way that it was previously written in the contract. So minus the $17 million, the Cardinals have already cut $50 million from the roster. There are projected arbitration raises for arbitration eligible players. All of that factoring in. I think this London Bird is asking, are the Cardinals going to do more with the number now that they know what that number is, or are they going to continue to cut back?
Yeah, I mean, I think, first of all, I mean, we got the number now. We know what it is. The news comes out, but let's not pretend like DeWitt and, the front office admins weren't already at least somewhat aware of what this number would be and what implication that would have on the payroll. I mean, let's not forget, they made the conscious decision and put it out publicly long before that to cut payroll, long before we actually heard what this new number would be and what the Diamond Sports media would actually, what this whole media deal would be nowadays, right? So having said that, even with like a 75% decrease, even if they had gotten the full amount or potentially even more, I could see the front office and the ownership circle still wanting to cut back on payroll, because, I mean, what they have right now is a team who doesn't have a good farm system, doesn't have a lot of future prospects, given where like the current standing, where they don't have, the roster said they have a lot of aging veterans, not a lot of guys coming up through the pipeline. They're in a messy situation right now, which is why we're seeing them starting to press the reset button, not just in the front office, but with the team as well. Whatever money that is coming in through that, they're slashing payroll for a reason. I think they're probably going to pocket that at the ownership level. And I would not expect there to be any, I mean, there might be a little bit of a boost in payroll spending. This might mean this might translate to a $10 million increase in payroll or a 15. Nothing too crazy to the point where we're going to be seeing the Cardinals in the Juan Soto sweepstakes or, any elite player sweepstakes, because that's just not that's not their MO. It hasn't been for my entire lifetime where they're going to go splash on the big free agents. So if I had to assume, this is probably going to be a situation where, okay, in spite of them having to of them receiving about 3/4 of the revenue that they would be getting from the previous TV deal, A, they're not going to be spending the same amount, knowing that, and B, even if they were, I could see them just pocketing that money, and it behooves them to probably do so, because if you're in a situation like St. Louis and if you're spending money to probably teeter around 500, that's not somewhere you want to be. If you're the only time you should be at around 500, getting slightly off track, is if you are on the ascension from the team that was already kind of on its way up. So think 2015 Astros, think 2016 Astros before they eventually won the whole thing the year after. So if you're in a spot like the Cardinals, maybe money is somewhat tight. I say that in air quotes because these guys are multi-billionaires. It would be something where I feel like they should just sit back, maybe pocket that for now and focus on player development and front office development, getting those chairs set with guys who you think can help field a fruitful team over the next half decade, later in the late 2020s or late 2030s, yada, yada, yada. So if TLDR, I would think it's something where they're probably just going to hold tight. That money is going to go into Billy's pockets, and the rest of it is probably going to be seen on field within the far future, not the near future.
Gabe, your thoughts on the question?
Yeah, I'd say it is probably good news. I mean, the 25% drop expected is not calculating the direct-to-streaming number, I don't think. And it also helps them set up a streaming option for the future for when they have more of a system in place. This is basically to delay having to have a more concrete setup, I guess, in my opinion anyway. So I think it's good for those reasons. And from a fan perspective, it's really good because, as far as I know, if you have cable, you can still watch the Cardinals. But if you don't have cable, now you have an option to watch it without getting blacked out by MLB TV. And I think outside of St. Louis region, you still have to get MLB TV, but that's never been an issue. So, I mean, I take it as good news from a fan perspective, just because I don't have to change anything about how I watch Cardinals, which is nice at least. And I was a little bit worried about that because I do still have cable, and I watch other things on cable, but the Cardinals are really what makes it worth getting cable, quite honestly. So we'll see. We'll see what happens when I'll have to do something else. But for now, I consider it good news, just so that I keep watching the Cardinals the way I've always watched the Cardinals.
Yeah, for sure. Go ahead, Heather, your thoughts.
I was just going to say, I think business-wise with the Cardinals, it's kind of a neutral move right now. I mean, we know what the number is, but it's probably not going to change anything for this season. But as a fan, I think it's fantastic to know that there's a direct-to-customer streaming option that doesn't involve having a cable subscription and doesn't involve MLB TV and then a VPN or, any other wild things you have to do to be able to watch baseball. So I think that's fantastic.
One of the comments under Evan Drellich's post, whenever he was talking about it, there was a dude that said, "I can't wait to pirate this." I laughed. For me, I think there needs to be an added point to the context of this discussion, is that the Diamond News wasn't the only contributing factor to the potential of the cutting back of salary, because an alternative revenue stream that is the fans coming into the stadium and purchasing tickets is also going to affect how much the team spends or is able to project out how much it can spend on player salary. And so we saw the Cardinals, what they annually get over 3 million fans, but this past season they ended up at about 2.5 million, I think. And if they're just simply projecting out for that to repeat, then obviously, payroll is going to have to go down, and somewhat of their own doing, right? This is of their own doing in the way that they didn't put the best possible product on the field. I mean, they'll tell you that they thought they did, but fans will disagree and tell you otherwise. And so for me, the Diamond News part of it is good because, like Gabe said, and Heather, you mentioned this as well, fans are still able to consume the product. You're still able to get the Cardinal games and watch them, and now you have a direct-to-consumer option for blacked out markets or where it was getting blacked out, and so now those fans can also have access to watching Cardinal games. If you're out of market, you still have to purchase MLB TV, but hey, there's still a route for you to be able to watch your Cardinals if you're a fan outside of the market. So it really is expanding on getting fans more fans' eyes on the game, and it is a good thing, but much like the way that you have to approach or think about the way that the Chaim Bloom era is going to occur, when you look at how it went in Boston, and I promise I'm going to tie this all together. When you look at how it went in Boston, he got axed too soon before you got to see the fruits of all of that under the hood labor, right? You're about to see a Roman Anthony and a Marcelo Meyer and a Christian Campbell and a Kyle Teal and all those guys come up for that Red Sox team if they're not traded off this season for a pitcher. Who knows what's going to happen in Boston? But it's going to take time to see the good results of this decision. And in the same way that when you think about Chaim Bloom in Boston, he wasn't there long enough for the good results to come. I feel like this is the same situation with the Diamond News. It's going to take time for the good results of the direct-to-consumer, and along with the cable and along with like the reset, and then more player growth and establishing a new core and foundation. It's going to take time for you to see the fruits of the labor and the results of all of that work. So is it good for how did he ask this? The fear of a great chasm of doom. I don't know that I would go that far. I think that there's still going to be, a watchable product on the field. It may not be reaching to the the potential ceiling of whatever could possibly be. Like they've already said, our goal isn't to win as many games as possible this season. It's more about growth. Okay, I appreciate that you're setting expectations at a reasonable place rather than trying to sell us a bill of goods that you're never going to cash in on. So I appreciate it from that perspective, but Chasm of Doom, no. World Series winner, no. I kind of, at this point, expect a pretty mediocre result, probably in the same range that they were this past season, somewhere in that 80 to 85 range, if I had to guess. Gabe, I'll start with you. What player are you betting on to have the most improvement in 2025, and just a really quick why?
Well, I have a good. It's kind of a weird answer because I'm not good at like guessing this kind of thing, but I'm gonna go with the guy who the Cardinals just got, Roddery Munoz. And it's a pretty simple answer, which is that a lot of times when a guy who isn't a starter tries to be a starter, he has really bad stats, and his pitches aren't necessarily utilized in the most ideal manner. But then when they're used in short bursts, stuff can really fly. And I think he has a really good chance to be the next Ryan Fernandez, quite honestly. I don't know if he's cheating because he wasn't a Cardinal last year, but
no.
What?
No, it's not cheating. You can use whatever criteria you want. It's okay.
Okay. But yeah, he's my answer just because I think when people were talking about him in the past, they weren't really acknowledging that all the stats were as a starter, which is just almost a completely different ballgame. If you're expected to face three batters, Marlins were so desperate for starting pitching that he's not a starter. That's clear. We know this. The Marlins just had to use him at starter, and the Cardinals did not pick him up to be in place of Graceffo or whoever. They picked him up so that he could be hopefully the next Ryan Fernandez. So that's my answer. That's and to be fair, he could be like a below average reliever and have hugely improved results from last year. So I'm going to go with Roddery Munoz.
I think there's a lot of good answers in here, and I'll give mine at the end as I have been. But Heather, go ahead. Who do you think, what player are you betting on to have the most improvement in 2025, and a quick why?
Jordan Walker.
Damn it, that was mine.
I was like, Jordan Walker, and the reason why is because his 2024 was so bad that I don't think he could possibly have a worse 2025.
Oh, we didn't have to go that far. Poor
no,
kid.
I mean, but I'm picking one where it's like the odds are, because I do believe in Jordan Walker, and I really want it to work, because I really, when I saw him at Winter Warm Up give his interview, I really, really liked him. His personality seems great. He seems poised to become a star, and I want that for him. And so maybe this is like more of an optimistic than me, but I think his 2024 was just not going to happen again. We're who knows her? We're putting her behind us. She's in the past. We're looking forward to a new 2025, and I think it's going to be better. So that's where my money is.
Well, that's a great answer. I can assuredly tell you that, only because I was going to say it.
Yeah, great answer. Great minds think alike.
That's right. Adam, what player are you betting on to have the most improvement in 2025, and why?
I'm going to go with Nolan Gorman. I mean, just simply because we've seen him produce at a high level before, and in 2023. This season was obviously a hiccup. I have confidence in the new coaching staff to really turn him around and see what they can do. And hopefully Brant Brown has something up his sleeve to really get this guy to make more consistent contact, because there's few guys who hit the ball as hard as he does consistently at the major league level. There's an all-star somewhere in Nolan Gorman with the bat. And, I could be biased just being a Cardinals fan, but I mean, you see what kind of year he had. It was so bad to the point where he really has nowhere to go but up. I think Rodri Munoz probably is a really good answer, kind of like how Gabe mentioned, given the fact that he was like a negative 1.6 F-WAR pitcher last year and wasn't deployed quite the way you would want him to. But since you said him, I'm going to go with Nolan Gorman.
I'm glad we're all trying to play contrarian and pick something different, because nobody wants to hear the same answer over and over again. And like you mentioned, Heather, Jordan Walker would be a fantastic pick. He was, MLB pipeline at the very end before he graduated to the major leagues, had him at number 3 overall prospects in baseball. And so when you think about just what kind of potential exists in that and what kind of ceiling is possible for that, I feel like the most obvious answer would be Jordan Walker. Nolan Gorman is a great option. We all see the power potential. It's real. It's obvious. Can he figure out the consistency aspect to his game and do it on a more consistent basis? That would absolutely raise his ceiling and his stock significantly. I love Rodri Munoz as an option. The fastball is big. The secondary stuff has some really interesting shapes to it. Really exciting to see what the Cardinals intend to do with him if he, in fact, does wind up in the bullpen. I think he could become a weapon. For me, though, just because I want to continue on the path of contrarian from everybody, I'm going to go with Ivan Herrera as the player to have the most improvement in 2025. His ability to throw out runners this past season was abysmal, and if he is able to strengthen his throwing arm and a throwing program in the offseason, and even just finds himself to a way to maybe like league average throwing out runners, that's a huge step forward for the Cardinals and their defense behind the plate. And not only that, but when you take into account that not only because of injuries and being sent down, he went from, I believe it was like April 14th all the way until September between hitting a home run. And I sat there, and every night that he DH'd, I'm sitting there going, when is this guy going to get into his power? Because last offseason, we watched him play in the the Caribbean series, and he was hitting a home run basically every other game, or it seems like every game. And I'm sitting there going, wow, he has way more power than I had originally anticipated. And then it didn't really translate into the major league season, unfortunately. I mean, we saw it very briefly there at the beginning, and so with some of that just carrying over that momentum from that Caribbean series and spring training and all of that, possibly, but I believed in what we were seeing in the exit velocities and the StatCast data that was coming out of those games. And so for me, just the overall power potential that I don't think the Cardinal fans have seen at the major league level yet. There is still more to get out of that bat, and we saw a consistent hitting approach, good plate discipline. There's a lot of really fun tools in that toolbox. If he's able to put it all together in 2025 and increase his arm strength and throw, I think you have potentially a top 15 catcher in baseball next season in Ivan Herrera if he's able to put it all together. David Green Jeans asks, if you could write anything that went wrong in Cardinal history, which would you choose? You can only choose for baseball reasons. So obviously Oscar Taveras living would be a top choice due to the value of human life. But would Rick Ankiel maintaining his control through the MV3 era give us more championships? What would the team look like now if Alex Reyes had ever been healthy? What one thing would you do or would you change in Cardinals history to make them more fruitful? I will start with Heather.
Okay. So the first one that popped into mind was not having Michael Wacha
in 2014
Game 5.
Yeah,
but that's not really. That's kind of a stupid one because I don't think.
No,
that
I think it's a good one. I don't know. You don't know.
That just is a decision that makes me so mad that I want to go back there and like do something to stop it. But realistically, I another one in 2015, I believe, Adam Wainwright blew out his Achilles only a few starts into what was looking to be a really, really good season from him. And I think I just want to know, that was also the season where they had Jason Hayward and they won
100 games in 2015. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Without Wainwright, I really would like to know.
That's a good call.
What would have happened if I could somehow stop him from blowing out his Achilles? Like, I go back in time and tell him, stretch your Achilles.
Put a magic brace around his Achilles.
I don't know if that would have helped, but that's what I would like to know.
Gabe, what would you change? What one thing would you change in Cardinals history?
I would somehow do everything in my power to block the Marcell Ozuna trade. I don't know how I would go about doing that, but just maybe, hey, I'm from the future. This is going to be the not make this trade. Keep your starting pitchers. Everything will change if you just keep these starting pitchers. Don't do anything. This team might not make the playoffs, but trust me, in the future, you'll be grateful.
Of course.
I'm getting a post idea just from this.
Well, here's the funny thing. I'm glad you brought that up, and Adam, I'll get to your answer in just a minute, is when you think about it, we have to add this context to it, I believe, because it's important. At the time, I still think you make that trade because you're still looking at an emerging Alex Reyes. You're still looking at an emerging Jack Flaherty. I believe Luke Weaver is still a part of the, not Sandy Alcantara. Junior Fernandez is still a name that's, near the top of prospects list. And so, like, when you think of,
I understand why the trade was made.
Yeah, for sure. I agree with your point. Like, with hindsight involved, yeah, obviously go back and block that. But I feel like some fans talk about it like they knew it was going to happen from the start, that was going to be a major disaster. And I feel like that's disingenuous, that like those fans who say that, because at the time I didn't have a problem with it, and I still think, going back 7 years, I still think you make that deal.
My biggest beef with it is just that Ozuna was okay. He wasn't the guy we traded. I mean, and that was maybe a mistake, but they expected him to be really good. But he was not that. I mean, he was just average here, really. He had like 2.1 WAR and 2.9 WAR. I don't know. That's not who. I mean, you're willing to trade aces for a star. He just wasn't a star. That's where I would be like, you're not getting a star. Just letting you know.
I wonder if his defense is part of why that number was suppressed, because I always felt like his offense was, above average. Didn't he make an all-star team in 2019? Am I remembering that correctly? I feel like that was the case.
He had 107 weighted runs created plus and 110 weighted runs created. Weighted runs created plus. So his offense was just like slightly above average. His defense wasn't actually that. He was,
he had a good arm.
A little below average. He just had that embarrassing play, but his defense wasn't actually.
Yeah, I was thinking about that.
That was an incredible moment. The worst Spider-Man in the history of Cardinals baseball.
Yeah. His career weighted runs created plus is 119, and he was below easily below that both years in St. Louis. So
What-
we weren't even getting his career hitting when he was here.
I also
which-
have to factor in the fact that he played his home games at Busch Stadium, which notoriously suppresses
That's factored in
power.
that
So,
stat, though.
yeah,
That's factored into way to runs created plus.
right. I understand. I'm just saying. I feel like maybe that for the counting stats, I should say. But regardless, Adam, what would you change if it was one thing in Cardinals history?
There's probably a couple. I mean, one that really came to mind initially was I would love to see how Rick Ankiel would have panned out as a pitcher. You know, I mean, that was obviously his calling card coming up through the minor leagues. He was arguably the best prospect in baseball back in 1999. But I guess the more concrete answer that I have, which is obviously a little bit more somber, you know, Oscar Taveras was probably the best prospect of the past 20 years the Cardinals have had. And he passed away on my birthday in 2014.
Ooh, rip.
So, yeah, seeing how he could have panned out as a major leaguer would have been very interesting to see. You know, obviously the late Taveras was a really good player in the minor league, so it would have been really nice to see him carve out some sort of major league career. But, you know, it is very unfortunate what happened. But that's my answer. I would have loved to see what would have happened with him.
I think mine will come with some controversy, and only because we know what happened in 2013. I'm going back to 2011, and I'm giving Albert Pujols whatever money he asks for. And knowing that the plantar fasciitis played a major role in what happened in Anaheim, I don't care. I still think that 2012 through 2015, he makes this Cardinals team over the top, and I think that they get past the Giants in 2012 and 2014 because of his inclusion in the lineup. And so for me, I would give Albert, I would match whatever the Angels gave him at the 210 mark, because I think there is value also in the long term in him hitting those milestones of 500 and 600 home runs in a Cardinals uniform. And you know, some fans may say that he's not on the same level as Stan Musial in Cardinals history, just because Stan did it all with St. Louis and Albert did, you know, 40% of it with Anaheim and 60% with St. Louis. Going back to our answers about who our favorite player is, I feel like it shouldn't be that much of like a controversy over the fact that like I just love Albert Pujols and I love, you know, what he did for the Cardinals for that 2000 to 2011 stretch. But I would go back and match what the Angels tried to give him, or at least come close enough that it wasn't really even a thought for him to leave. So for me, that's what I would do.
I like that answer.
I will say, I mean, I hear you, Jake, and I think it would be interesting to kind of think about what he could have been in St. Louis had he not left. Maybe the morale is higher, but you know, that did allow them to pay guys like Adam Wainwright, guys like Yadier Molina, guys like Matt Carpenter, who all had very successful careers post arbitration years with St. Louis, right? So seeing what they were able to accomplish, maybe that didn't lead to a World Series. Perhaps after 2011, they did make the World Series in 2013, but I would say that even the payoff probably wasn't so great with Pujols. We did see what happens with the opportunity cost of not paying him, and it was a positive outcome in that regard, I would argue.
Sure, but for me, I guess I would fall in the line of what you said in the past, is that Bill DeWitt's not hurting for money, right? So would that move have precluded him from doing Adam Wainwright and Yadier Molina and Matt Carpenter and all of these other players? You know, would that have truly precluded him from doing all those things? I would question, or I would push back and say no. But
realistically, though, he wouldn't have, though. We know that.
For sure.
I know he could have,
but what I'm saying is to the point where he was saying that it would be inhibitive of him to do so. No, he would have had the money to do so should he have chosen to chosen. And so that's part of the crux.
I'm saying he just wouldn't have, though.
Yeah.
If he
no, but that's what I'm saying is, like, you have Albert Pujols, you're paying Albert Pujols, and, you know, we love Adam Wainwright and we love Yadier Molina and we love Matt Carpenter and what they all became and were able to become. And I understand your side of the argument, and it's a great point, well made. For me, I'm an Albert Pujols guy. I'm always going to be an Albert Pujols guy. I would have enjoyed watching the entirety of his career in a St. Louis Cardinals uniform, and that's what I would have changed. Maybe he doesn't develop the plantar fasciitis in St. Louis. I mean, that's such a hard thing to say because it's a natural like reaction in the foot, but you know, you never know what happens in an alternative universe, and so that's kind of where we play this game. And so for me, I would have matched that or come close. I would have at least broached the $200 million mark. I know that the Angels pay him like 210, 220, something in that range. So
275.
Oh, was it 275? Yeah, I would have at least broke it because if I remember correctly, the top offer that Mozeliak made was like 189 at the time, and so like the fact that he didn't even reach that 200 mark was a real slap in the face, in my opinion. But you know, you're paying the best player over the last 10 years, and granted.
240, sorry. 240.
Okay, 240. Yeah. So we have a different understanding of, or a better understanding now, I should say, of like not paying players well into their 30s, aging players well into their 30s, and it's all points well made, and I totally am on your side with that. It's a personal thing, right? I would have loved to seen Pujols all 700 and whatever home runs hit in a Cardinals uniform, and me being able to cheer for him, and for other fans potentially not having those years of hard feelings and disdain. All right, that'll do it for us on this episode of the Viva Albertos podcast. Thank you so much to everybody who submitted their questions. They were all really fun topics, and didn't get divisive there at the end, but it certainly it became a fun discourse, and that's really what this is all about, is being able to discuss and present ideas and thoughts and bring you all the best possible Cardinals/baseball coverage we possibly can. So thank you all for writing and participating, and hopefully next month's iteration, if you didn't have a question answered, you will have it next month or going forward. We plan to do this monthly as a way to continue to foster engagement between you, the listener, and us, the writers. Adam, thank you so much for being here. Thanks for joining us, and we'll talk to you again down the road.
Yeah, of course, man. Thanks for, I guess, usually trying to be around as much as I can.
Gabe, thanks for doing this again, man. It's you've been really good at being available for all of these things and being flexible, so thanks for being here.
Oh, no problem. Hopefully that'll continue. We'll see.
Yeah. And Miss Heather, thank you so much for being here. As always, the czar of Viva Albertos, and making sure that everything goes out accordingly and on time and properly. Thank you so much for everything that you do, and thanks for being here and chatting some Cardinals baseball with us.
Yes, thanks for having me. I'm happy to do it. This has been fun.
All right, guys, that's it for us. We'll talk to you again next week. Thank you so much. Thank you guys so much for listening to this episode of the Viva Albertos podcast. Make sure you go over to X and follow us at Viva Albertos. Also, if you're listening to this on Spotify, make sure you hit the follow button and also hit that bell so you can be notified the moment that our episodes are released to the public. So make sure you go and do that, and have a great day. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next week.